4, Chapter 4. Signor Delacroix was so ill that his daughter, Barbara, had to give me my lessons for the next 2 weeks. As soon as he was well, he dismissed his maid and engaged a new one. Barbara asked me to tell her lover that she hoped to win over the new maid and persuade her to deliver their letters to each other. As soon as she had succeeded in doing this, I ceased to concern myself with their intrigue, realizing only too well the disastrous consequences it might have for me. But unfortunately, the harm was already done. I went to Father Georgie's house nearly every evening, and although I spoke little, I was never bored. He and his friends criticized without slandering, talked politics without fanaticism, and discussed literature without passion. It was a good education for me. When I left the wise monk's house, I would join the large company assembled in the Cardinal's palace, but only because it was my duty. One evening, His Eminence said to me, "Have not you yet gone to kiss the Holy Father's foot?" "Not yet, Monsignor." "You should go to see him." As I was leaving, Father Gamma told me I could visit the Pope the next day. I went to Monte Cavallo the next day. As soon as I was given permission to enter, I went in to see the Pope. He was alone. I prostrated myself and kissed the Holy Cross on his holy slipper. He asked me who I was. When I told him my name, he told me he had already heard of me and congratulated me on being in the service of such an important cardinal. Then he asked me how I had become a member of the cardinal's staff. I told him everything, beginning with my arrival in Martorano. He laughed heartily at what I told him about the poor bishop. Finding myself at ease with him, I told him so many things and amused him so well that he told me he would be glad to see me any time I wished to visit him. I asked him for permission to read all forbidden books, and he gave it to me with his blessing, telling me he would have it delivered to me in writing, which he forgot to do. Benedict XIV was learned, friendly, and fond of laughter. I saw him for the second time at the Villa Medici, where he spoke to me of trifles as we walked together. He was accompanied by Cardinal Albani and the Venetian ambassador. During our stroll, a modest-looking man came up to him, and the Holy Father asked him what he wanted. The man spoke to him in a low tone. After listening to him, the Pope said, "You're right. Commend yourself to God." The poor man walked away sadly. "That man wasn't satisfied with your reply, Holy Father," I said. "Why not?" because he had apparently already commended himself to God before speaking to you. When you referred him back to God again, he found himself being sent, in the words of the proverb, from Herod to Pilate, or Pilate. The Pope burst out laughing, along with his two followers, but I remained serious. I can do nothing worthwhile without the help of God, he said. That's true, Holy Father, but that man knows you are God's prime minister, so it's not difficult to imagine his perplexity now that he finds himself sent back to the sovereign. There's nothing left for him to do except go and pay the beggars of Rome to pray for him. They boast of their high standing with God, but I believe only in yours, and I beg you to deliver me from this inflammation of the eyes by allowing me to eat meat on fast days. You may eat meat, my son. That same evening, in the Cardinal's palace, I found that everyone had already heard all about my conversation with the Pope, and everyone was eager to speak with me. This flattered me, but what flattered me still more was the joy which Cardinal Acquaviva vainly tried to conceal. Toward the end of November, Angelica's fiancé came to invite me to spend 24 hours in Trovoli with the same company I had entertained in Frascati. I accepted gladly and promised to be at Donna Cecilia's house at dawn. We would have to leave very early because Trovoli is 16 miles from Rome, and it takes a great deal of time to see all the beautiful sights there. At dawn, I arrived at Donna Cecilia's house in my two-seated carriage. She was my traveling companion while the rest of the family rode in the six-seated phaeton which Don Francesco had rented. We reached Trovoli at 10 o'clock. First of all, we carefully examined Don Francesco's house, and then we spent 6 hours seeing the ancient wonders of Trovoli. I have forgotten to say that while we were being shown through the house, I happened to praise a small bedroom overlooking an orange grove. The gallant owner obligingly told me I would occupy it that night. Lucrezia pretended not to hear, but it was a guiding thread for her because, having to visit the beauties of Trovoli with the rest of the company, we could not be sure of finding ourselves alone together at any time during the day. We came in toward evening, overwhelmed with fatigue and dying of hunger. After a 2-hour supper of succulent foods and exquisite wines, each of us felt the need of a good bed. Lucrezia said she would sleep with Angelica in a bedroom overlooking the orange grove, that her husband would sleep with her brother and her mother with her younger sister. Everyone was delighted with this arrangement. Don Francesco took a candle and led me to my small bedroom. It was next to the one in which the two sisters were to sleep. Angelica did not know I was going to be her neighbor, But Lucrezia and I had understood each other without saying a word. Looking through the keyhole, I saw the two charming sisters come in and prepare to go to bed. In that happy climate, one sleeps in a state of nature. Lucrezia, knowing that I was waiting for her, told her sister to sleep on the side of the bed next to the window, unaware that she was exposing her charms to my profane eyes. The Virgin walked across the room completely nude. Lucrezia blew out the candles and lay down beside her chaste sister. Happy moments which I can no longer hope to enjoy, but which death alone will make me forget. I do not think I have ever undressed more quickly than I did that night. I opened the door and fell into Lucrezia's arms. She turned to her sister and said, "It is my angel. Do not say anything. Go to sleep." What a ravishing scene I could present to my readers here if it were possible to depict voluptuous pleasure in all its enchanting aspects. What a series of sweet ecstasies until a delicious exhaustion forced us to yield to the power of Morpheus. The first rays of dawn shining in through the cracks in the blinds drew us from this refreshing sleep, and like two valiant warriors who have interrupted their blows only to renew the combat with increased vigor, we abandoned ourselves once again to all the activity of the passion with which our senses were aflame. "Oh, my Lucrezia, how happy your lover is," I exclaimed. "But be careful of your sister. She might turn around and see us." "Don't worry, my love. My sister loves me and pities me. Is not that right, Angelica? Oh, turn around and see your sister's happiness." Angelica, a young virgin of 17 who must have spent the night in all the torments of Tantalus, was delighted at the chance to show her sister she had forgiven her. She turned around, showered her with kisses, and admitted that she had not closed her eyes all night long. "I also want you to forgive the man who loves me and whom I adore," said Lucrezia. "Angelica hates me," I said. "I wouldn't dare." "No, I don't hate you," exclaimed the charming girl. "Kiss her, my love," said Lucrezia, pushing her toward me and happy to see her languishing motionless in my arms. But sentiment still more than love forbade me to deprive Lucrezia of the proof of gratitude which I owed her. I was impelled toward her by a sudden, overwhelming impulse, and my ardor was intensified by the ecstasy in which I saw Angelica as she witnessed the amorous combat for the first time. Lucrezia, languishing, begged me to finish, but finding me inexorable, she disappointed my ardor and the genteel Angelica. Angelica made her first sacrifice to the goddess of love. Lucrezia, languishing, begged me to finish, but finding me inexorable, she disappointed my ardor, and the gentle Angelica made her first sacrifice to the goddess of love. Lucrezia, astonished and delighted, covered us both with kisses. Angelica, as happy as her sister, expired deliciously in my arms for the third time, and with such passion and tenderness that I seemed to be savoring true happiness for the first time. The daylight coming in through the blinds warned me that it was time for me to leave. After tenderly taking leave of my two divinities, I withdrew to my own bedroom. A few moments later, I heard the good lawyer's jovial voice coming from their room. He was reproaching his wife and sister-in-law for sleeping too late. After carefully washing and grooming myself, I made my face presentable and stoically presented myself in the drawing room, where I found the two sisters in the midst of the assembled company. Lucrezia was gay and relaxed, and her face showed great happiness. Angelica, fresh as a morning rose, was more radiant than usual, but she was nervous and carefully avoided looking directly at me. After dinner, we went for a walk in the garden. When I was alone with Lucrezia, I tenderly reproached her for what she had done. "Don't reproach me," she said, "when I deserve only praise. I have enlightened my sister, and now she must envy me instead of pitying me. And since I'll have to leave you soon, I'll leave her behind to replace me." "Oh, Lucrezia, how could I love her? Isn't she charming?" "Yes, of course, but my love for you makes it impossible for me to love anyone else. Besides, Don Francisco will soon be absorbing all her attention, and I would not want to trouble the peace of their marriage. And I'm sure she's completely different from you. I'm sure she's already blaming herself for giving in to her impulses. That may be true. I only know that my heart is breaking because my husband expects to have his verdict within a week, and then my days of happiness will be over." We returned to Rome, and Lucrezia spent 3 hours alone with me in my carriage without noticing any decrease in my ardor. As she had predicted, her husband obtained his verdict 3 or 4 days later. He himself came to tell me that he was leaving in 2 days. I spent the 2 evenings with Lucrezia, but always in the presence of her family. On the day of their departure, wishing to give her a pleasant surprise, I left ahead of them and went to the inn where they were to spend the night. But the lawyer was delayed by various minor mishaps and had to leave 4 hours later than he intended. They, therefore, did not reach the inn until the next day at dinner time. After the leave of each other, they resumed their journey, and I returned to Rome. After my Lucrezia's departure, I found myself in a kind of void. I spent days on end in my room making summaries written in French by the Cardinal himself, and His Eminence was kind enough to tell me that my summaries were excellent, but that I ought not to work so hard. On Christmas Day, Barbara Delacroix's lover came into my room, closed the door, threw himself on the sofa, and cried out that this was the last time I would ever see him. "I've come to you for advice," he said. "What kind of advice can I give you? Here, read this, and you'll know everything." It was a letter from his mistress. "I now bear a token of our mutual love in my womb. It is no longer possible for me to doubt it, my dearest, and I warn you that if you do not take care of me, I am determined to leave Rome alone and go off to die wherever God wishes. I will suffer rather than confess my secret to my father. If you're an honorable man," I said to him, "you cannot abandon her. Marry her in spite of your father and hers, and live together as man and wife. Providence will watch over you." This advice appeared to calm him, and he left. Toward the beginning of January 1744, he came back to see me again, this time looking quite happy. "I've rented the top floor of the house next to Barbara's," he told me, "and she knows about it. Tonight I'm going to go out through the attic window and come into her room to decide when we will elope. Naples. Since the maid sleeps in the attic, she'll have to know about our elopement, so I'll take her with me too." A week later, toward 11 o'clock at night, he came into my room accompanied by a priest. "What do you want at this hour?" I asked. "I've come to introduce this handsome priest to you." I looked and saw with alarm that it was his mistress in disguise. "Did anyone see you come in?" I asked. "No, and in any case, she looks like a priest. We spend every night together now. The maid is working with us and has agreed to come with us. We've arranged everything. I wish you luck, but please leave now." A few days later, Father Gamma told me significantly, "The Basiello, or his deputy, will come to a certain house tonight to arrest someone who is not expecting it." This news alarmed me, for I guessed that it must concern either Barbara or her lover. I tried to find the young man, but without success. Toward midnight, as I was preparing to go to bed, Barbara suddenly rushed into my room disguised as a priest, foreseeing the consequences her presence might have for me. I asked her to leave immediately. As soon as I said this, she burst into tears, threw herself at my feet, and begged me to have pity on her. Where is the heart of steel which cannot be softened by the tears of a pretty woman? I yielded, warning her that she was bringing disaster to both of us. "I'm sure no one saw me come into the palace," she said. "And it's lucky I came here a week ago, because otherwise I couldn't have found your room. It would have been better if you'd never come." What happened to your lover? Sbirri arrested him and the maid. I'll tell you everything. He told me he'd be waiting for me in a carriage. I dressed myself out to meet him. The maid walked a short distance ahead of me. When I came to the street corner, I felt that my shoe was unbuckled. I stopped to buckle it, and the maid went on. Thinking I was still following her, she reached the carriage and climbed into it. But as I was approaching it, I saw about 30 spree by the light of a lantern. One of them took the driver's place and set off at a gallop with my lover and the maid inside. They'd mistaken her for me. What could I do? I couldn't go back to my father's house, so I followed my first impulse and came here. What will you do when daylight comes? I asked. I'll leave, she replied, sobbing. No one will recognize me in this disguise. I'll leave Rome and walk straight ahead until I fall dead from fatigue and sorrow. The night was cold and I had no fire, so I advised her to get into my bed, promising to respect her. I was too deeply moved and too cruelly tormented to feel any desire. I lay down beside her, fully dressed. I woke up at dawn and made the poor girl eat some biscuits soaked in wine. I then took her up to the top floor of the palace, led her to a rather decent place where no one ever went, and told her to wait for me there. I went to see Father Gamma, who told his servant to bring us some chocolate. As soon as we were alone, he told me he had been ordered to ask the Cardinal to expel a person who was to have entered his palace sometime around midnight. I'll have to wait till the Cardinal is up and dressed, he said, but I'm sure that if anyone came here without his knowledge, he'll have them expelled. Judging that I had at least an hour in which to act, I went to Barbara and told her to write these words. I am an honorable girl, Your Eminence, but I am disguised as a priest. I beg you to allow me to tell you my name in person. I hope that in the generosity of your heart, you will save my honor. I told her how to send this note to the Cardinal and assured her he would see her as soon as he read it. When you are in his presence, I said, fall to your knees and tell him your story without concealing anything except the fact that you spent the night in my room. He must not know I had the slightest knowledge of your intrigue. Tell him that when you saw your lover arrested, you entered his palace and climbed to the top of the stairs, and that, after spending a painful night, you felt inspired to write to him to implore his pity. I'm sure he'll find some way to save you from disgrace. After she had promised to do exactly as I told her, I went to Mass. Where the Cardinal saw me. I then went out and did not return until dinner time. During the meal, no one had talked of anything except the affair which concerned me. Only Father Gamma said nothing, and I imitated his silence. But from all the gossip, I gathered that the Cardinal had taken my poor Barbara under his protection. That was all I had wished. Thinking I had nothing more to fear, I silently rejoiced over my stratagem, which I regarded as a minor masterpiece. After dinner, I questioned Father Gamma about the matter, and here is what he told me. A certain man, whose name I don't know yet, asked the apostolic vicar to prevent his son from eloping with a certain girl whom he intended to take outside the Papal States. The vicar ordered the sabri be posted to catch the young couple in the act and arrest them. SBIRRI. The vicar ordered that sabri be posted to catch the young couple in the act and arrest them. The order was carried out, but the arrest was only half successful because the woman who came out of the carriage with the young man was not the kind one elopes with. A few minutes later, a spy reported that a young priest had run into the Cardinal Acquaviva's palace just as the arrest was being made. The Bargello suspected it might have been the girl disguised as a priest. The Cardinal was informed of everything at 9 o'clock this morning. He ordered that the whole palace be searched, but a quarter of an hour later he ordered the search stopped. And here's what must have been the reason. The palace steward tells me that at exactly 9 o'clock, a very handsome priest, whom he believed to be a girl in disguise, came to him and asked him to deliver a note to the Cardinal. That as soon as the Cardinal read it, he had the priest shown into his apartment and that he hasn't come out since. The order to stop the search was given immediately afterwards, so it seems probable that the priest is really the girl who escaped from the spree last night. I felt sure that Father Gamma would not have told me this story if he had suspected the part I played in it. But the next day he came into my room and told me the apostolic vicar knew the young man was my friend and that he believed I knew the girl also, since her father was my French teacher. Everyone is sure, he added, that you knew all about their plans, and it's natural to assume that the poor girl spent the night in your room. I admired the way you behaved with me yesterday. I could have sworn you knew nothing about the matter. And you would have been right, I replied seriously. I have not seen the girl for 6 weeks. I know the young man well, but he never told me anything about his plans. People can believe whatever they like. You say it's natural to assume that the girl spent the night in my room, but allow me to laugh at those who take their conjectures for realities. That's a common failing among Romans, my dear friend. And those who can laugh at it are lucky. But the calumny may do you harm. The next day, Father Gamma told me the Cardinal had sent the girl to a convent and that he was sure she would eventually leave it to become the young man's wife. 2 days later, I went to see the good Father Georgie. He told me that everyone was talking about the attempted elopement and that the whole scheme was attributed to me, which, he added, displeased him greatly. I spoke to him as I had spoken to Father Gamma, and he appeared to believe me, but he said that in Rome people did not want to know things as they were, but rather as they choose to make them. That you went to Delacroix's house every morning, he said, and that the young man often came to see you. That's enough. Your innocence won't prevent the incident from being held against you. If 40 years from now a conclave should ever consider electing you pope. In the following days, the fateful incident began to irritate me beyond endurance, for all my acquaintances spoke to me about it, and I saw clearly that they pretended to believe me only because they did not dare to do otherwise. But what upset me the most was the fact that Cardinal Acquaviva no longer spoke to me as freely as before, although no one but myself could have noticed the change. Toward the beginning of Lent, the Cardinal called me into his study and said to me, "People have decided that I profited from the awkwardness of the young man who tried to elope with Delacroix's daughter. In spite of my contempt for gossip, I cannot appear to brave it openly. I am therefore forced to ask you not only to resign from my staff, but also to leave Rome. I'll tell everyone you're going on an important mission which I've entrusted to you. You have only to decide where you want to go. I have friends everywhere, and I'll give you recommendations that I will assure you a new position. Come back tomorrow and tell me where you want me to address my letters. Prepare to leave within a week. Believe me when I tell you that I'm sorry to lose you, but an absurd prejudice forces me to make the sacrifice." I went out alone in black despair. I loved Rome. I had been well on the way to making my fortune. And now suddenly I found myself cast into the abyss, not knowing where to go, and cut off from all my brilliant prospects. Where should I go? The question seemed unanswerable. I thought about it all night, but in vain. After Rome, everything else seemed indifferent to me. When I went back to see the Cardinal the next day, I vividly depicted to him the pain I felt at having to leave him. "I have lost all hope," I said, "because I feel that I can make my fortune only by remaining in your service." I spent nearly an hour telling him my troubles and shedding abundant tears, but without shaking his resolution. When he asked me where I wanted to go, despair as much as anger made me say Constantinople. "Constantinople!" he exclaimed in amazement. "Yes, Your Eminence, Constantinople," I repeated, drying my tears. After a moment of silence, he said to me with a smile, "I thank you for not deciding on Ispahan, because that would have embarrassed me. Will you set sail for Naples or Venice?" "Venice? Venice." When I returned to my room, I began to reflect on the choice I had made. Either I am mad, I said to myself, or I'm yielding to the force of my destiny. What can I possibly do in Constantinople? I have no idea, but I know I must go there. 2 days later, the Cardinal gave me a passport for Venice and a sealed letter addressed to Aspen Banaval in Constantinople. Father Georgie asked me to write to him, but Father Gamma laughed and told me he was absolutely certain that I was not really going to Constantinople. I went to take leave of Donna Cecilia. She had just received a letter from Lucasia announcing that she would soon have the good fortune to become a mother. The good fortune to become a mother. I also went to take leave of Angelica and Don Francesco, who had been married a short time before without inviting me to their wedding. When I went to receive Cardinal Acquaviva Last's orders, he gave me a purse containing 700 sequins. I left Rome in a carriage with a lady who was traveling to fulfill a pious vow she had made during an illness of her daughter, who was traveling with her. The daughter was ugly and the journey was boring. Chapter 5. When I reached Bologna, I took lodgings in a small inn and decided to have some new clothes made for myself. As I was thinking of this, it occurred to me that it was no longer very likely that I could make a career for myself as an ecclesiastic. Uncertain as to what other career I ought to choose, I had a sudden impulse to transform myself into an officer, intending to return to Venice. I was delighted at the idea of making my appearance in Venice wearing a military uniform, for I had been rather badly treated there when I dressed as a priest. I sent for a tailor. After I had explained to him how I wanted my uniform to be made, he took my measurements, and the next day I was transformed into a disciple of Mars. I bought a long sword, and then, cane in hand, I went out to take a stroll around the town. Deciding that my newly acquired importance demanded more impressive quarters than the ones I had rented on my arrival, I moved into a better inn. I still like to remember my pleasure when I was able to admire myself at leisure in a large mirror. I was delighted with myself. It seemed to me that I was made to wear, with honor, the military uniform I had been happily inspired to choose. In order to go to Venice, it was necessary to go through a quarantine. But I did not wish to undergo that formality. In those days, I took singular pleasure in doing anything that was forbidden, or at least difficult. I knew that there was free passage between Mantua and Venice, and also between Modena and Mantua. If, therefore, I could enter Mantua and give the impression that I was coming from Modena, my exploit would be successful. I hired a driver to take me to Rowboat, a town on the Po River in the state of Mantua. This driver told me that by taking back roads, he could go to Peloro and say that we were coming from the city of Mantua. The only problem would be his inability to produce the health certificate, which should have been issued to us in Mantua, because we would be asked to show it at the gate of Peloro. I told him to say he had lost it and leave the rest to me. A little money persuaded him. When we reached the gate of Rivero, I said I was an officer of the Spanish army and that I was on my way to Venice to speak to the Duke of Modena about an important matter. Not only did the officials neglect to ask my driver for the health certificate, but they gave me full military honors and treated me with great respect. I arrived in Venice on the evening of April 2nd, 1744, my birthday. The next morning, I tried to reserve passage to Constantinople, but I was unable to find a ship leaving in less than 2 hours or 3 months. So I took a cabin on a ship that was going to Corfu sometime that month. After thus preparing to obey my destiny, which, according to my superstitious mind, imperatively demanded that I go to Constantinople, I set out in the direction of the Piazza di San Marco, enjoying in advance the astonishment of my friends at finding me no longer an abbey. My first visit was to await Grammani. Abate Grammani. He uttered an exclamation of surprise when he saw me. He had guests, among whom I noticed an officer in the uniform of the Spanish army, but that did not shake off my self-assurance. I told Abate Grammani that I was only passing through Venice, and that I thought it my duty to pay him a visit. I didn't expect to see you in such a costume, he said. Where are you going? To Constantinople, and I hope to find quick passage, because Cardinal Acquaviva has given me some dispatches to deliver. Where were you before you came here? With the Spanish army. I left only 10 days ago. As I said this, I heard the voice of a young nobleman cry out, "That's not true." My profession, I said to him curtly, does not allow me to tolerate being contradicted. Bowing to the assembled company, I walked out, paying no attention to those who called me back. I was wearing a uniform, and it seemed fitting that I should have that sensitive pride which characterizes so many military men. I walked out, paying no attention to those who called me back. I was wearing a uniform, and it seemed fitting that I should have that sensitive pride which characterizes so many military men. I went to Signor Orio's house, where I found Nanetta and Martina. The two charming sisters seemed to have grown even more beautiful, but I did not think it advisable to tell them what had happened to me during the 9 months I had been away from them. I told them only what I wanted them to hear, and spent 3 delightful hours with them. I had dinner with Major Peloro and several other officers. They all told me I ought to enter the Venetian army, and I made up my mind to do so. I know a young lieutenant, said the major, who would like to sell his commission. He wants 100 sequins for it, but you'd also have to have the approval of the Minister of War. Speak to him about it. I'm ready to pay the 100 sequins. He promised to do what he said, and toward the end of the month I entered the service of the Republic of Venice as an ensign in the Bala regiment, which was stationed on Corfu. The officer whose commission I had bought was a lieutenant, but the Minister of War promised me I would be promoted without fail before the end of the year. I set sail on May 5th, well supplied with money and jewels. As soon as I landed on Corfu, I presented myself to Signor Andrea Dolfin, the Governor General, who assured me once again that after the next inspection, I would be promoted to the rank of lieutenant. When I left him, I went to see Signor Camporese, my captain. I went to see Signor Camporese, my captain, who was very well received by him. My third visit was to Signor Dr, a commander of galleys, to whom Signor Dolfin had recommended me. After our first exchange of polite conversation, he asked me if I would like to become his personal adjutant. I accepted his offer, and without further ado, he had me taken to the room I was to occupy in his house. My captain assigned a French soldier to me to serve as my orderly. He was both loquacious and a hairdresser. I was therefore glad to have him, because he would be able to take care of my fine head of hair, and I needed to practice speaking French. He was a drunken, dissolute good-for-nothing, a peasant from Picardy, who was barely able to scrawl a few words, but that did not matter to me because it was enough for me that he spoke rather well. He was an amusing buffoon. He knew a large number of satirical songs and racy stories, which he told so well that he almost made one die of laughter. Among the Governor General's entourage, the lady who distinguished herself the most by her beauty and charm was Signora Adriana F. Her husband, a galley captain, had come to Corfu with her the year before, and she had dazzled all the officers there. Believing herself to be in a position to choose whomever she liked, she had shown a marked preference for Signor Dr, to the exclusion of all her other admirers. I saw her for the first time at table on the day when I moved into Signor Dr's house. She made a deep impression on me. I regarded her as so far above any other woman I had ever seen before that I was not afraid I might fall in love with her. It seemed impossible that I should ever be able to raise myself to her level. I even went so far as to convince myself that there could be nothing but platonic friendship between her and Signor DR, and I judged that Signor F, her husband, was right not to be jealous. This Signor F, by the way, was an utter fool who was in no way worthy of such a wife. This first impression was too foolish to last for long. It soon changed, but in a way that was entirely new to me. My position as adjutant entitled me to the honor of eating at the same table with Signor DR and his company. The other adjutant, an ensign like myself and agreeably stupid, shared the honor with me. We were not really considered as guests, however, and no one spoke to us. I found this situation intolerable. I knew very well that it was not caused by any deliberate contempt, but all reasoning aside, I felt that it was too harsh to be endured. It seemed to me that Sanzonio, my colleague, had no right to complain, for he was a dull-witted oaf. But I could not reconcile myself to being placed in the same category with him. After 8 or 10 days, Signora F, never having deigned to glance in my direction, began to displease me. I was offended and angry, especially since I was far from thinking that her conduct might be deliberate. I was convinced that I was nothing in her eyes, and knowing myself to be something, I was determined that she should know it also. Finally, an occasion arose when, feeling that she could speak to me, she was obliged to look me in the face. Signor DR, having noticed that I had a superb turkey in front of me, told me to carve it. I set to work immediately, but I was not skilled in the art of carving. Signora F laughed at my awkwardness and told me that since I was not sure of being able to carry out my task with honor, I ought not to have undertaken it. Embarrassed and unable to answer her, as my anger would have required, I sat down with my heart full of hatred for her. She made matters still worse. Some time later, when, being obliged to mention me, she asked me what my name was. I had been in Signor DR's service for 2 weeks, and she saw me every day. She ought to have known my name. Furthermore, my extraordinary good luck in gambling had made me famous all over Corfu. My resentment was at its peak. I had invested my money with a certain Maroli, a major by profession and a gambler by trade, who ran a Faro game in a cafe. We divided the work evenly. I took care of the bets for him when he was dealing, and he did the same for me when I had the cards, which was rather often, for he was generally disliked, and he handled the cards in an alarming manner, which I did just the opposite. I was very lucky, but I was relaxed and smiling when I lost, and I won without avidity, which always pleases the other gamblers. I had little confidence in Maroli, We counted the winnings every night when the game was over, and each of us took his share home with him. Lucky in gambling, enjoying good health, and the esteem of my friends, I would have been happy with my life if I had been treated less haughtily by Señora F. For no reason, she seemed to want to humiliate me from time to time. My self-esteem made me detest her. And in that frame of mind, the more I admired her physical perfections, the more stupid I found her to be. She could have assured herself of my devotion without loving me, for I aspired to nothing more than not being forced to hate her. She neither loved me nor hated me. That was quite clear. And yet, being young and having a need for laughter, she had, without premeditation or malice, made me the target of her gibes, which my sensitive pride greatly exaggerated in my eyes. I was eager to punish her and make her repent her treatment of me. I carefully thought over how I could do so. At first, I decided to make use of my money and my wit to make her fall in love with me, and then take vengeance on her by treating her with disdain. But I soon realized how impractical this plan was, for assuming that I could find the way to her heart, I could not hope to be capable of resisting my success with a woman like her. Then chance abruptly altered the situation. One day, Signor Dr. sent me to deliver some dispatches. I returned to him the next morning to report on my mission. He ordered me to write a letter, and while he was reading it over, his valet came in to tell me that Señora F. wished to speak to me. Signor Dr. told me I could go to see her, since he had nothing more to tell me. I hurried to her house, extremely curious to learn what she wanted with me. She did not keep me waiting, and I was surprised to see her sitting on her bed, her face flushed. And her eyes red from the tears she had obviously been shedding. My heart began to pound for a reason I did not understand. "Have a seat," she said to me. "I want to speak to you." "Señora?" I replied. "I don't consider myself worthy of such an undeserved honor. Allow me to remain standing while I listen to you." Remembering, perhaps, that she had never before treated me with such courtesy, she insisted no further. "Last night," she began, after pausing a moment to regain her composure. "Last night my husband lost 200 sequins to your Faro bank. He thinks I'm holding the money for him, and he must pay his debt today. Unfortunately, though, I spent it, and I have no other money at my disposal. I thought perhaps you might tell Rolli you've received the sum my husband lost. It is a valuable ring. Keep it until the first of the year, when I'll pay you the 200 sequins. In the meantime, I'll sign a note for it." "I'll accept the note, Señora," I said. But I don't want to deprive you of the ring. Aside from that, allow me to tell you that your husband must either pay his debt to the bank in person or send someone in his place. In 10 minutes, you'll have the sum you need. I left without awaiting her reply and returned a short time later with 2 rolls of 100 sequins each. I handed them to her, put the note she had signed into my pocket, and prepared to take leave of her. She then spoke these precious words to me. I believe that if I had known you'd be so obliging to me, I would not have had the courage to ask this favor of you. The first thing I did when I returned home was to cross out all the words of the note she had given me, except for her signature. I then put it into an envelope and deposited it into or with a notary. In the receipt for it, I had him specify that the sealed envelope would be given to no one but Señora F. in person whenever she should request it. That same evening, Signor F. came to my game, paid me, gambled with cash, and won about 50 ducats. From then on, Signora F. always spoke to me each time she was seated opposite me at table, which often gave me the opportunity to make myself better known to her by telling pungent stories, or making comments in which I was careful to mingle instruction with jest. In those days, I had a great talent for making others laugh while I remained serious. I had learned it from Signor Malipero, my first instructor in the art of living well. If you want to make someone weep, he used to say, you must weep yourself. But if you want to make someone laugh, you must remain serious. Whenever Signora F. was present, my sole purpose in everything I said and did was to please her. However, I never looked at her without a specific reason. I never allowed her to become certain of my purpose. I wanted to reduce her to becoming curious, to doubting herself, to trying to guess my secret, but without being able to turn it to her own advantage. I had to proceed gently and with caution. Toward the middle of November, La Valle, my orderly, fell ill with pneumonia and was taken to the hospital. On the 4th day, the priest who had attended him told his captain that he was dead and gave him a letter written in French. Captain Camporete, who spoke only Italian, asked me to translate it for him. It read the following: It is my will that this letter be given to my captain after my death. I asked him to bury me in a tomb from which my body may be removed, if the Duke, my father, should request it. I also asked him to send a certificate of my death to the French ambassador in Venice, with instructions to forward it to my father, in witness whereof I have affixed my signature, Francois VI, Charles Philippe Louis Faucon, Prince de la Rochefoucauld. When I finished reading this singular letter, this singular letter when I finished reading it. This letter, I could not help laughing. But the stupid captain found my hilarity out of place and went off to tell the Governor General about the letter. I was certain that it would be laughed at all over Corfu. Half an hour later, Adjutant Señor came in and told me the Governor General had ordered that the prince be buried with all the honors due to his rank. Then Minotto, the Governor General's adjutant, came to tell me that His Excellency wanted to see me. When I entered his office, the old general said to me, "Did you know your orderly was a prince?" I'd never have expected it. I'd never have suspected it, Your Excellency, and even now that he's dead, I don't believe it. What? A man doesn't play practical jokes when he's about to die. If you believe his story, Your Excellency, my duty is to keep silent. It must be true, and your doubt surprises me. It's because I know something about the Lafayette family, and because I knew my orderly too well. He was nothing but a ridiculous buffoon. Just then, Captain Camprete came in and told us that La Valet was still breathing. The Governor General glanced at me significantly and said he was delighted that the prince still had a chance of recovery. The next day, my new orderly told me that La Valet was feeling better and that the doctor had declared him out of danger. Everyone spoke about him at table, but I said nothing. 2 days later, the gullible Governor General gave him an elegant apartment and a valet. From then on, everyone was eager to meet the new prince, and he was addressed only as Your Highness. His imposture would have been quickly discovered if someone had had a copy of Almanac Royal, which contains the genealogies of all princely families, but there was not a single copy of it on Corfu, and the French consul was a fat lout who knew nothing about such matters. La Valet left his sick bed a week after his metamorphosis. Every night he had supper at the Governor General's table, where he never failed to drink himself unconscious. In spite of this, however, everyone continued to believe that he was a prince because of the perfect calm with which he awaited the reply to a letter of inquiry which the Governor General had written to Venice. I met him one day as I was leaving the fortress, and he reproached me for not having come to see him. I laughed and advised him to flee before the Governor General learned the truth about him. I offered to help him by persuading the captain of a Neapolitan ship to let him hide on board his vessel. But instead of accepting my offer, which should have filled him with joy, he hurled coarse insults at me. The lunatic was paying court to Señora Sagredo, who was proud that a French prince had preferred her to all the other ladies of Corfu. One day, when she had been invited to dinner at Signor Dior's house, she asked me why I had advised the prince to flee. "He told me about it himself," she said, "and he's amazed at your obstinate belief that he's an impostor." I gave him that advice, Señora, because I have a kind heart and sound judgment. Do you mean to say that we are fools, including the Governor General? That wouldn't be a correct conclusion, Señora. Holding a different opinion doesn't make a person a fool. It may turn out that I am mistaken. But if so, I won't consider myself more foolish than anyone else. A lady of your intelligence must surely be able to tell whether a man is a prince. A lady of your intelligence must surely be able to tell whether the man is a prince or a peasant. For example, can he describe his coat of arms? Can you doubt it? I have very strong doubts, Signora. In fact, I'm sure he knows nothing about it. Just then, the prince arrived. As soon as he entered, Señora Sagredo said to him, "Prince, Señor Casanova here tells us you know nothing about your coat of arms." On hearing these words, he walked up to me with a sneer, called me a coward, gave me a slap, which dazed me momentarily. I took my hat and cane, walked slowly to the door, and descended the stairs. I left the house and stood in the esplanade to wait for him. As soon as I saw him, I ran up to him and began to beat him with my cane. He retreated and found himself between two walls where, in order to avoid being knocked unconscious, he had no choice but to draw his sword. But the coward did nothing of the sort, and I left him lying on the pavement in his own blood. The crowd of onlookers parted to make way for me. I walked past them and went to the cafe, where I drank a glass of lemonade without sugar in order to precipitate the bitter saliva with which my rage had engendered. In no time at all, I was surrounded by all the young officers of the garrison, who told me I should have killed the insolent coward. They finally began to annoy me. Finally, they began to annoy me because it was not my fault that I had not killed him. I would certainly have done so if he had drawn his sword. I had been in the cafe for about half an hour when the general's adjutant came to tell me that His Excellency ordered me to present myself for confinement on board the Bastrade, a flagship on which imprisonment consists of wearing chains on one's feet like a galley slave. This order was too severe, and I had no inclination to obey it. "Very well," I said to the adjutant. "I'll be there." He went away, and I left a moment later. But when I reached the end of the street, instead of going to the Esplanade, 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 I went toward the sea. I walked along the shore for a quarter of an hour until I found an empty rowboat. I rowed out toward a large caique. Caique. I rowed out towards a large caique. that was making its way against the wind with 6 oars. As soon as I reached it, I asked the crew to hoist the sail and put me on board a large fishing smack, which could be seen in the distance. I let my rowboat drift off, and after paying handsomely for the use of the caique, C-A-I-Q-U-E, I paid handsomely for the use of it. I climbed aboard the fishing smack. I came to an agreement with the captain, and he hoisted me 3 of his sails. 2 hours later, he told me we were 15 miles from Corfu. Then the wind died down. Then the wind died down. Then the wind died down. I had him row against the current. But toward midnight, the sailors told me they were so tired they could not go on, and asked me if they could sleep until dawn. I refused. Instead, for a trifling sum, I had myself taken ashore without asking where we were, in order not to arouse their suspicion. It was enough for me to know that I was 20 miles from Corfu, and in a place where no one could imagine me to be. In the bright moonlight, I saw a church standing beside a house, a long shed open at both ends, a level stretch of land about 100 paces wide, then mountains and nothing more. I lay down in the shed on some straw I found there and slept rather soundly, in spite of the cold, until dawn. Hearing the sound of bells, I went toward the church. The long-bearded Greek Orthodox priest, surprised by my appearance, asked me in Greek if I was Greek. I replied that I was Italian. He turned his back on me, went inside his house, and locked the door, unwilling even to listen to me. I looked toward the sea and saw a boat leaving a tartan lying at anchor 100 yards off the island. 3 people stepped out of it when it reached shore. I walked up and saw a healthy-looking Greek man, a woman, and a boy of 10 or 12. I asked the man if he had had a good voyage and from where he came. He replied in Italian that he had come from Bologna with his wife and son, and that he was on his way to Venice, but that before going there he had come to attend Mass in the Church of the Holy Virgin of Casopo in order to learn whether his father-in-law was still alive and whether he would pay his wife's dowry. "How will you learn that?" I asked him. "I'll learn it from Father del Mulo, who will faithfully interpret the Holy Virgin's oracle for me." I bowed my head and followed him into the church. He spoke to the priest and gave him some money. The priest said Mass went into the Holy of Holies. The priest said Mass went into the Holy of Holies, came out a quarter of an hour later, ascended the altar and turned toward us. Then, after composing himself for a moment and straightening his long beard, he uttered his oracle in 10 or 12 words. The Greek from Bologna, who was certainly not Ulysses, gave the impostor still more money and left him with an expression of contentment. I went with him, and as we were walking along, I asked him if he had, or rather if he was satisfied with the oracle. "Oh, yes," he replied. "I know that my father-in-law is alive and that he'll pay the dowry if I leave my son with him." "Does the priest know you?" "He doesn't even know my name." "Do you have good merchandise on your ship?" "On your ship, do you have good merchandise?" "Yes. Come on board for dinner and I'll let you see it. You'll see it all." Delighted to learn that there were still oracles and convinced that there always will be as long as there are simple men and deceitful priests, I went on board the good man's ship, where he gave me an excellent dinner. His cargo consisted of cotton, linen, Athenian grapes, oil, and fine wine. I bought a little of everything from him, except for the cotton. Then he offered me an excellent rifle for 10 ducats, telling me that in Corfu anyone would give me 12 for it. I bought it from him at his price. Armed with my rifle and carrying all my purchases in a large sack, I took leave of the honest Greek and had myself taken ashore, resolved to lodge myself in the house of the fraudulent priest with or without his consent. In my pockets I had 400 or 500 small copper coins. They were heavy, but I had thought it best to procure them, foreseeing that I might need them on a little island. I deposited my sack in the shed and walked to the priest's house with my rifle on my shoulder. The church was closed. I knocked on the door of the priest's house. He came to the window and then closed it, refusing to listen to me. I knocked again, storming and swearing, but all in vain. Furious, I aimed at a poor sheep grazing 20 paces away and shot it down. The shepherd began to shout. The priest put his head out the window, cried, "Thief! Thief!" and had the tocsin sounded, Tocsin sounded. Seeing 3 bells in motion, I realized that a mob would soon assemble. What was going to happen? I had no idea, but come what might, I reloaded my rifle and waited. No more than 8 or 10 minutes had gone by when I saw a crowd of peasants coming down the mountain armed with rifles, pitchforks, and heavy sticks. I withdrew to the shed without the slightest fear, for it did not seem natural to me that they should try to kill me without listening to me. The first of them, numbering 10 or 12, came forward with their rifles ready to fire. I stopped them by throwing out copper coins, which they quickly picked up in astonishment. I followed the same procedure as the others came forward until finally I had no more coins left and I saw no one else approaching. The villagers looked at each other in stupefaction, not knowing what to think of a distinguished-looking young man whose intentions were apparently peaceful, and who threw money to them with such generosity. I was unable to say anything to them until the deafening sound of the bells had died down. But as soon as I opened my mouth, I was interrupted by the priest, his beadle, and the shepherd, who tried to arouse the mob against me. One of the villagers, an elderly man who appeared to be reasonable, came up to me and asked me in Italian why I had killed the sheep, in order to eat it after paying for it. I replied, "But His Holiness has the right to ask the ducat for it. Here it is." The priest took the ducat and walked away, terminating the entire incident. The peasant told me he had served in the War of 1716 and that he had taken part in the defense of Corfu. I congratulated him on this and asked him to find me lodgings and a servant who could prepare my meals. He told me I could rent a whole house and that he himself would prepare excellent meals for me, but that I would have to climb up the mountain. I told him I had no objection to that. He summoned 2 husky young men, loaded one of them with my sack and the other with my sheep, and we set out. On the way, I said to him, I'd like to have 24 strong men in my service under military discipline. I'll give them each 20 copper coins a day, and I'll give you 40 to act as my lieutenant. You'll have a military guard before the day is over. We arrived at a very comfortable house. On the first floor, there were 3 bedrooms and a stable, which I immediately transformed it into a guard room. My lieutenant left me there and went off to procure everything I needed. By the end of the day, I had furniture, kitchen utensils, a good dinner, 24 vigorous and well-armed young men, an aged seamstress, and several young apprentice seamstresses to make clothes for me. After supper, I found myself in the most cheerful humor imaginable, surrounded by nearly 30 people whom treated me as a sovereign without being able to understand what had brought me to the little island. The only thing I found disagreeable was the fact that the young girls did not speak Italian. My Greek was too poor to allow me to make romantic speeches to them. I could not help laughing when my lieutenant drilled his troops the next morning. The next morning, my lieutenant drilled his troops. My guards were like a flock of sheep. They were all handsome, well-built, and alert men, but without uniforms or discipline. The best-looking troops formed nothing but a herd. They did, however, learn to present arms and obey the orders of their officer. I had 3 sentinels posted, 1 before the guard room, 1 at my door, and a 3rd at a point from which he could see the beach. The latter was to warn us if he saw an armed vessel landing. My cook, who had found the seamstress for me, hoped that I would be attracted to one of them. My zeal surpassed their hopes. Each pretty girl had her turn. They were all satisfied with me, and my cook was also rewarded with her services, or rather rewarded for her services. I led a very pleasant life, for my table was covered with delicious dishes, such as excellent mutton and woodcocks, whose equal I have never found anywhere except in St. Petersburg. I drank only Scopolo wine and the finest muscatels of the archipelago. My lieutenant was not only my only table companion. I never went walking without him, and two of my guards to help me defend myself against certain young men who believed that my seamstresses, formerly their mistresses, had left them because of me. During my promenades, I occasionally reflected that I owed my fortunate situation solely to my money. But it also occurred to me that if I had not been well supplied with money, I probably would not have left Corfu at all. I had been leading the life of a petty king for 8 or 10 days, when toward 10 o'clock at night, I heard one of my sentinels call out, "Who goes there?" My lieutenant went out and came back to tell me that a gentleman wanted to speak to me about an shown in, and in the presence of my lieutenant, he said to me in Italian, "Day after tomorrow, Sunday, Father del Bemopullo plans to use a catromoncia against you. If you do nothing to stop him, a slow fever will send you into the next world within 6 weeks." I've never heard of that drugs. It's not a drug. It's a curse which a priest utters while holding the consecrated host in his hand. Why should Father del Mopullo want to kill me? You're disturbing the peace and order of his parish. You have seduced some girls whose former suitors no longer want to marry them. After giving him a glass of wine, I thanked him and bade him good night. His warning impressed me as important, not because I was afraid of a catramoncia, in which I had no belief whatsoever, but because I thought I had reason to fear poison, which is much more efficacious. Effective. Efficacious poison, that is. Either way, the next morning I left the house without saying anything to my lieutenant. I went to the church alone, found the priest, and said to him resolutely, "At the first sign of a fever, I will blow your brains out. Govern yourself accordingly. Either give me a curse that will kill me in 1 day, or make out your will. Goodbye." After delivering this warning, I returned home. The priest came to pay me a visit early Monday morning. I had a slight headache. He asked my health, and when I told him my head felt a little heavy, I was forced to laugh at the anxiousness with which he hastened to assure me that it could only be the effect of the heavy air of the Isle of Casopo. The heavy air of the Isle of Casopo. 3 hours after his visit, the furthest sentinel uttered a shout of alarm. My lieutenant went out and came back a few moments later to tell me that An armed launch had put an officer ashore. I went outside and ordered my men to take up their arms. Then I saw an officer accompanied by a guide coming toward my house. I went back inside after instructing my lieutenant to receive the officer with proper military honors and then show him in to me. I soon saw the same adjutant Minotto who had come to order me to present myself for imprisonment. "You're alone," I said to him. This adjutant Minotto who had come to order me to present myself for imprisonment. "You are alone. And you've come as a friend. So let's embrace each other." I'm forced to come as a friend because I don't have enough men with me to come as an enemy. What I see here seems like a dream. Sit down and we'll have dinner together. All right. And then you'll go back to Corfu with me. Without knowing what will happen to me? That's out of the question. You're wrong. But let's eat. A good meal may help us to reason better. Toward the end of the meal, my lieutenant came in to tell me that bands of peasants were gathering in the vicinity of my house to defend me, because rumors had begun to spread all over the island that the armed launch had come to capture me and take me to Corfu. I ordered him to reassure the good people and send them home after giving them a cask of wine. They finally went away, but only after firing their rifles in the air as a sign of their loyalty to me. This is all very touching, said Minotto. But when the general reads my report, he'll decide to capture you without bloodshed. All these men who are so devoted to you won't be able to protect you from the one who will kill you for a few pieces of gold. Take my advice and come back with me. Come back to Corfu and enjoy a kind of triumph. You'll be applauded and entertained everywhere. People will laugh at your escapade, and at the same time they'll admire you for listening to reason as soon as I came to speak to you. Everyone respects you. Signor DR praises you especially for having enough self-control to keep from plunging your sword into that insolent impostor while you were in his house. What became of that wretched fool? 4 days ago, the general received an answer to his letter of inquiry, and he had him arrested immediately. But was he still received in good society after I beat him with my cane? Of course not. Do not you remember that he had a sword? That alone was enough to make everyone refuse to see him again. Your escape surprised everyone. It was only yesterday that we found out where you were. The priest here wrote a letter to Father Bulgari, complaining that an Italian officer had taken command of the island by force. He accused you of debauching all the girls and threatening to blow his brains out if he pronounced the cataramontia against you. The general laughed when the letter was read before the assembly, but he still ordered me to come here with 12 grenadiers and bring you back. Are you sure I won't be imprisoned? Yes, because His Excellency is a man of honor. And so am I. Let's go aboard the ship. I gave all my staple provisions to my lieutenant and had everything I wanted to take with me, placed in the launch. My guards, to whom I had given an extra week's wages, accompanied me to the launch under arms, which made Minotto laugh. We reached Corfu at 8 o'clock in the morning and tied up alongside the Bastrade, to which Minotto transferred me after assuring me that he would immediately send my baggage to Signor Dr's house and make his report to the General. Signor Foscari, who was in command of the Bastardi, gave me a very bad reception. If he had had a little nobility in his soul, he would not have been in such a hurry to put me in chains. If he had been willing to wait for a quarter of an hour, I would have been spared that humiliation. I already had the chain on my right foot, and my left foot was about to receive that handsome decoration when His Excellency Adjutant came to order my jailer to give me back my sword and set me free. Signor Dr was overjoyed to see me again. He told me I had done well not to let anyone know where I had gone. You can't imagine how much Signora F worried about you, he added. You'll make her very happy if you'll go to see her immediately. How pleased I was to receive this advice from Signor Dr himself. My goddess was still in bed when I arrived at her house, but her maid told me to enter. The curtains of her bed were drawn back, and I seemed to see Aurora surrounded by roses and morning dewdrops. I told her that if Signor Dr had not urged me to visit her immediately, I would not have come to her house without changing into more suitable clothes. She replied that Signor Dr, knowing the interest she took in me, was right to tell me to come, and she also assured me that his esteem for me was as great as her own. We all admired your self-control in not running your sword through that madman, she said. I would certainly have killed him if you hadn't been present, Señora. That's a very gallant compliment, but it's hard to believe you were thinking of me at that time. At these words, I sighed and lowered my eyes. She questioned me about the life I had led on the island, and I told her all about it, with the exception of the pretty seamstress whom I was careful to pass over in silence. Everything I told her made her laugh a great deal, and my conduct impressed her as admirable. I left her with my heart full of joy. Several days later, Signor Dr said to me, Signor F's adjutant died yesterday, and he's asked me to let you serve him until he can find a new one. I was sure that Signor F would not have made the request unless he had been asked to do so by his wife. This thought encouraged my love and flattered my self-esteem. 2 days later, I moved into Signor F's house. During the next 2 weeks, I was nearly always in her company, often dining alone with her or speaking with her in her bedroom, and yet I was unable to make any significant change in our relationship. Submitting to her will, but falling more deeply in love with her every day, I hoped that nature which is always stronger than our prejudices, would eventually bring about a happy climax. But aside from nature, chance also brought me closer to my goal. One day, as she was taking a stroll in the garden with Signor, she brushed against a wild rose bush and scratched herself deeply on the lower part of her leg. In Corfu, leg injuries are dangerous if one does not take good care of them. She was forced to stay in bed, and my fortunate position as her husband's adjutant obliged me to remain constantly at her orders. An old physician came to see her every morning. On the third day, she asked me to come in while he was dressing her wound. "Please look at my leg and tell me if it's less red today," she said. "In order to know that, Señora, I'd have to have seen it yesterday." "Don't worry," the doctor reassured her. "Just stay in bed and you'll recover." When the maid had left the room and the doctor was over by the window preparing a poultice, I asked her if she felt any hardness in her calf and if the redness extended higher up her leg in streaks. I naturally emphasized these questions with my hands and eyes. I saw neither hardness nor redness, and the affectionate patient laughingly drew the curtains of the bed, which gave me a chance to kiss her. From her lips I descended to her wound and, convinced for that moment that my kisses must be the best possible remedy, I would have continued if the sound of the maid coming back into the room had not forced me to stop. When I was alone with her again, burning with desire, I begged her at least to make my eyes happy. "I feel humiliated," I said, "when I think that the happiness I just enjoyed was only a theft." "But what if you were mistaken?" The next day I was again present when the doctor applied a new dressing. As soon as he was gone, she asked me to arrange her cushions, as though to make that pleasant task easier for me. She raised the covers, enabling me to see beauties that intoxicated my eyes. I took as much time as I could, and she did not complain that I moved too slowly. By the time I had finished, I was exhausted. I sank into a chair facing her, lost in a kind of trance. I contemplated that bewitching woman who never gave me a pleasure without later granting me a greater one, but without ever reaching the final goal. "What are you thinking of?" she asked. "The supreme happiness I just enjoyed." "You're a cruel man." "No, I'm not cruel. Since you love me, you should not feel ashamed of being indulgent. And if I'm to love you passionately, I mustn't believe I enjoyed that delightful sight only by chance, because then I'd have to admit that anyone else in my place would have had the same good fortune, and that thought would torture me. Let me be grateful to you for having showed me this morning how happy I can be from only one of my senses." The next day, as soon as the doctor had left, she sent her maid out to buy a few things. "Oh," she said to me several moments later. "Oh, she forgot to change my chemise for me. She forgot to change my chemise for me. Then allow me to replace her." "All right, but on condition that only your eyes will take part in the operation." "I accept the condition." She took off her chemise and told me to hand her the clean one quickly, but I was too preoccupied with everything I saw. "Hurry, hand me the chemise," she said. "It's on the little table." "Where?" "There, at the foot of the bed. I'll get it myself." Leaning toward the table, she revealed nearly everything I desired. Then, slowly straightening up, she gave me the chemise. I was trembling so violently that I was unable to hold it. She took pity on me and allowed my hands to share the happiness of my eyes. I fell into her arms, our lips mingled, and in a voluptuous pressure we both reached an amorous climax which, though not sufficient to satisfy our desires, was sweet enough to allay them for the moment. With more self-control than one usually has in such circumstances, she made me stop at the threshold of the temple, refusing to let me enter the sanctuary. A general inspection was ordered at Huayin. Signor F was sent there. He left instructions for me to rejoin him there early the next morning in the feluccia. I had supper alone with Signor F when I complained that I would not be able to see her the next day. She said, "Let's make up for that privation by talking together all night. Here are the keys. When you see that my maid has left me, go through my husband's bedroom and come back here." I followed her orders faithfully. We were alone together with 5 hours before us. It was a hot night in June. She was lying on her bed. I took her in my arms and she pressed me to her bosom, but then she exercised her cruel self-restraint again. She said I had no right to complain, since I was suffering only from the same privations she was imposing on herself. My protests, pleas, and supplications were futile. "We must hold love in check and laugh at it," she said, "because in spite of the harsh law we impose on it, we succeed in satisfying our desires anyway." After the ecstasy, our eyes and our mouths opened at the same time, and each of us took pleasure in seeing the satisfaction that shone in the other's face. Each of us took pleasure in seeing the satisfaction that shone in the other's face. Our desires were rekindled. I saw her look at my nakedness. She seemed to become angry. Then she cast aside everything that made the heat more uncomfortable and our pleasure less perfect, and threw herself on me. She seemed driven by something more than amorous ardor. It was a kind of furious determination. I shared her frenzy. I was in the grip of a rapture that was about to annihilate me. But just as the offering was about to be completed, she threw me off, slipped away from me, came back and gave me an perfect satisfaction with a hand that was obliging enough, but seemed to me to be made of ice. You're consumed with passion, and yet you refuse the only remedy that would calm you, I said to her. Your hand is more humane than you are, but you did not share the pleasure it gave me. I don't want my hand to be any less kind than yours. Come, my darling. Love is giving me new life, hoping I'll die again, but only in a charming nook you made me leave at the crucial moment. As I was saying this, she breathed out her soul in words of tenderness. She held me tightly in her arms, and I felt that she was flooded with pleasure. We spent the rest of the night in tender moans and voluptuous delights, and it was not until dawn that I tore myself from her arms to go to Queen. 10 or 12 days went by before we were again able to extinguish a spark of the fire that was devouring us, and that was precisely when a terrible misfortune befell me. One night after supper, when Signor DR had retired, Signor F did not hesitate to tell his wife in my presence that he intended to pay her a visit after he had written 2 short letters, which he had to send off early the next morning. As soon as he was gone, we looked at each other and fell into each other's arms. A torrent of passion flowed through our souls without constraint, but then, without giving me time to consummate my victory, she pushed me away and threw herself into an armchair beside her bed. I stood staring at her in bewilderment, trying to guess what had caused her to act so strangely. She gave me an ardent look and said, "My love, we've just narrowly escaped disaster." "Disaster?" I cried. "I feel as if you've killed me. You may never see me again. Never see me again." I left her in a kind of frenzy and walked toward the esplanade to breathe some fresh air, for I felt as though I were choking. No man who has not personally undergone the cruel torment of such an experience will be able to form an idea of my suffering. In my state of extreme agitation, I heard someone call my name from a window, and I had the fateful courtesy to reply. I stepped closer and saw the famous Medulla standing on her balcony. "What are you doing here at this hour?" I asked. "I'm taking a breath of fresh air," she replied. "Come up for a moment." This Medulla was an extremely beautiful courtesan from Zante, who had been the delight of all the libertines in Corfu for the past 4 months. Everyone who had seen her celebrated her charms. They celebrated her charms. No one talked of anything but her. I had seen her several times, but although she was indeed quite beautiful, I did not find her at all comparable to Signora F. I walked up the stairs in a daze, and she led me into a voluptuous boudoir. After she had reproached me for being the only man on Corfu who had not visited her, while I was the one she would have preferred above all others, I gave in to her advances. It was not desire, imagination, or the worth of the object which made me succumb, for she was in no way worthy of possessing me. Rather, it was only weakness and the state of excitement in which I still found myself. I also acted out of a kind of spite because the woman I loved had displeased me by a caprice which, if I had not been unworthy of her, would have had no other effect than to make me love her still more. Medulla, satisfied, refused to take the money I tried to give her, and let me leave after spending 2 hours with her. When I came back to my senses, I detested myself, along with the ignoble creature who had made me commit such a vile outrage against the most adorable of women. I was cruelly punished for my debauch. 3 days later, just as I was getting out of bed, a painful burning sensation informed me of the horrible condition in which the wretched courtesan had placed me. I was thunderstruck, and when I thought of the disaster of which I might have been the cause if my goddess had bestowed her favors on me within the past 3 days, I was on the point of losing my reason. Intending to remedy the dis-ease as I had already done several times before, I began a regimen which I expected to restore me to health within 6 weeks without anyone suspecting that I had been ill. But I had not reached. Intending to remedy the dis-ease as I had already done several times before, I began a regimen which I expected to restore me to health within 6 weeks without anyone suspecting that I had been ill. But I had not reached the end of my tribulations. Medulla had injected into my veins all the poisons that corrupt the source of life. I knew an old doctor full of experience in such matters. I consulted him, and he promised to cure me in 2 months. He kept his word. The first thing I did after recognizing my condition was to inform Señora F of it. I valued her love too highly to run the risk of losing it through lack of confidence in her. "What an infamous woman!" she cried. I applied the word to myself as I saw what I had sacrificed to my disgusting weakness. I received a still more painful blow 8 or 10 days before the army left for Venice. Signor Dr. took me back into his service, and Signor F had to choose a new adjutant. His wife told me sadly that in Venice we would be unable to see each other. For several reasons, I begged her not to tell me what they were, assuming that they could only be humiliating me. As soon as we arrived in Venice, she attached herself to Signor Dr. again and loved him until his death. We left at the end of September and dropped anchor in the harbor of Venice on October 14th, 1745.